Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Maimin. I am one of the Associate Directors of Recruitment and Admissions at HUC, and thrilled to be with you all. And I am in New York. So thank you, everyone. It is a treat to be together today. And for this session, we'll be together for the hour. And I'm thrilled, as you heard, we have 3 fabulous rabbinical students with us, and I'm thrilled to join with them in sharing a little bit about preparing for grad school and specifically preparing for rabbinical school. So I'd love to, I'm gonna actually, I think the way we'll do this is that I'll maybe say a few words, and then I'm gonna ask some questions of Jack and Ilana and Shoshana. And as you have questions, feel free to put them into the chat and or unmute yourself. We'll do this really informally and be able to be together. And what a blessing it is, especially in this incredibly difficult time, to be able to be together and both be present in this moment and also be forward thinking in considering the possibilities of rabbinical school and a continuing Jewish leadership journeys wherever we're at in our lives. So Jack and Shoshana and Ilana, feel free to unmute yourselves and hop in. I would love to just start off generally by asking what kinds of things did you do to prepare for HUC? What did you find really helpful in preparing for HUC? Take it away.
So I did a year at Pades Institute of Jewish Religion. So before I came in, I applied to HUC in the beginning, but my knowledge of Jewish texts and even Hebrew was very limited. So I did an extra year at Pades to prepare for HUC, and eventually I reapplied and I was accepted. So that was really helpful for me.
That's fabulous. Thanks, Shoshana. I think it's an interesting thing considering rabbinical school, because it's a little bit different than applying to other graduate schools. And I think exactly what you just shared, Shoshana, is one of the things that we look for in our applicants is, and that's going to look different for everyone, but is really diving into Jewish learning before even starting in rabbinical school. Ilana or Jack, do you have anything you want to add to that for your own experiences?
Yeah, I mean, so one thing I did too is and this is like general, kind of two maybe falls in 2 different categories, but I had a really long conversation with my home rabbi, and we had this whole talk about, like, she was like, well, you're interested in, like, I was a bio major, I was a pre-med person, and she was like, why don't you read this book by Jonathan Sachs, and why don't you read The Sabbath and by Heschel? And like, so she actually like really suggested a whole long list of things, and I read those things, and they were really, really helpful for me in thinking about, like, in learning more, having more knowledge, like Shoshana said, and also just like for my own, like, the changing the way that I was thinking about Judaism and approaching it.
Fabulous. I love that. And I love, Ilana, also you talking about that relationship that you had with this rabbi and this mentor who was able to help you figure out, like, what might even be, right? The library is so deep and so broad, where even to begin.
And I'll say for my part that there was actually about a decade in between when I first inquired about the rabbinical program at HUC and when I applied. And in the year before I submitted my application, I had done a unit of CPE, which is clinical pastoral education. I'd spent that decade training as a psychotherapist and then working in community practice and then private practice, and then wanted to kind of explore the differences between, like, well, you know, what's the difference between a therapist and a rabbi? And CPE offered me kind of that opportunity to kind of tease those things apart. I also then signed on to teach at a local congregation. I'd not otherwise had experience teaching at a religious school, and, you know, just to kind of feel around. I'm like, I understand that this is sort of a piece of the work, and I wanted to just kind of get a better sense of it, and specifically the education piece. I also had to work on Hebrew because, that would be
I
the more
totally
you
hear
know
that.
coming in.
And
Yes.
I'd love to come to Hebrew next. You make me think, all of you make me think about, so I was ordained at HUC in 2013. And I think similarly to sort of all three of you, I think about the things that I was doing both in Hillel in college and then also after college to sort of prepare. And one of them was like a real deep involvement at Hillel and taking on leadership positions. Which I was very fortunate to be able to do. And the second was that similarly, Jack, I was thinking to myself, like, yeah, if this is something that I'm really considering and really interested in being in rabbinical school, I might want to feel out, like, what's it like to teach religious school? Because I hadn't done it before. And so I taught religious school and started going to Torah study because I felt like, who knows? I was thinking also, maybe I want to be a psychologist. And I felt like if I started going to these things and really didn't like any of them, then it was probably not going to be the right path for me. But as it turned out, I really loved to teach and loved learning. And so here I am, 15 years later. But I wonder if thinking back, actually, I want to stick to Hebrew. Because I know that's a question that a lot of folks have, right? So we do, for rabbinical school, we require the equivalent of 1 year of college level Hebrew. We do have an amazing seminary Hebrew program that applicants and prospects can now take that was not available when any of the three of you or I were applying to rabbinical school, but we do help our applicants and our prospects get to that place now. But I wonder sort of if any of you would like to talk a little bit about how you sort of got your Hebrew to a place of feeling ready, and whether there are things you wish you had done differently or more of as you were thinking about that Hebrew prep.
I'll say that like Hebrew has been perhaps like the biggest challenge and greatest learning curve for me. Like I've, been to graduate school, I had I think a strong sense of like the academics and what was professionally expected, and just like the volume. But Hebrew, my goodness, it took me a long time. I did not pass my first entrance exam. HUC was very accommodating, offered me support and tutoring, and was really committed to helping me kind of get it to a place where it needed to be. And then throughout the Ophan in the first year, I had HUC support again with a tutor. I'd had a tutor privately. I would just say, and it's something I continued to work on. I had taken the second year Hebrew class a second time. I did pass the first time, but just to keep working on it. And it's the kind of thing that you just need to keep working on throughout. And some of those resources you'll find at seminary, and certainly the willingness is there to help connect to outside resources as well. So it's hard, but it helps.
Thanks,
The more Hebrew you come in with, the more facility you have with Hebrew, like the greater depth you'll be able to access texts, and the greater facility with like liturgy and service leading, all of it. So Hebrew.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember taking the Hebrew test in Kampala in Uganda, and it was like a 3-hour test, and I could understand what they were asking, but I did not read or write script, so I had to answer in like the block letter Hebrew letters. Like I knew Hebrew prayer Hebrew, and I could read Torah. I think that was a good beginning, but I think I needed to work on that aspect. And when I applied to Pardes, I did Jewish study as well as take a Ulpan class. That was very, very helpful before I joined HUC. So I think that really helped me, and also coming with a background of knowing and understanding a little bit of Hebrew from the prayer Hebrew, basically.
Yeah, the Hebrew piece was hard. I mean, for me, it was a bit interesting. Like Shoshana, I wasn't doing Pardes, but I lived in Israel the year before I started rabbinical school. And I taught English in a school. And so like that just like being surrounded is like, it's obviously not like accessible to everyone. I will say the thing that I also did not pass the first time, I really did not know any. I knew like the letters. I knew like a few words that children know. And like, for me, like I'm the kind of person, like I sat down with there's like a book Aleph that like you use in Ulpan in the year in Israel. And I just like, I bought it from HUC and I just like sat down and just like went through the whole book myself. And like that, so suffice to say, like whatever way that you have to kind of take it on yourself, I think, because it's wonderful that there's a program now. Like I would highly recommend like an UPAN, some kind of program, because it's a hard language, even if you've learned another language. And I think just it requires, for me anyway, like it required a lot of like extra work and also a tutor, a friend who was doing the year in Israel. I went to his apartment once a week, like just like having that, like Jack said too, and Shoshana, like just kind of really having to work on it to get to a place where I could pass. And I did, and it was fine, but it took a lot of effort personally for me, because I didn't take it in college. So.
Yeah, thank you all for sharing honestly about it, right? For some of us, languages come really easily, and for some of us, foreign languages are really hard, and everything in between. And for some of us, maybe we studied like a Romance language, and Hebrew is a very different experience from studying a Romance language, or whatever else we might have studied. So I see a question in the chat about signing up for Seminary Hebrew. Michelle, can you put information about the interest form into the chat? I will just note that our Seminary Hebrew program is offered both in the fall and the spring. And we've already had 2 to 3 sessions of the fall semester. I see Alex, I see that you're in Seminary Hebrew. Is there anyone else who's currently enrolled in Seminary Hebrew? Harish is? Amazing.
I am.
And Dana is?
Yep.
And fabulous. So Michelle, do we still have spaces, or are we in kind of in a pausing place until January?
So kind of yes, kind of no. I think it depends on what your level is. There's kind of a little step process. So I'm going to share this link, but anybody feel free to email me. And I'll just share with you that pretty much the interest form is first. You meet with Lisa Ensel, who's our Seminary Hebrew learning coordinator. And then Lisa lets us know your level. And then we kind of decide if we have space right now in registration, like our higher level, our BET course is full. But if you're entry level and you have enough knowledge where you feel comfortable coming in at like the 4th class, then we can maybe squeeze you in. We still have like 1 or 2 spots left. Otherwise, it would start again in January, and we're working on getting registration set up for January just now. So you can't register just yet, but you'll want to do the interest form if you want to sign up.
Thanks so much for that, Michelle. Harish, I see you have a question, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to say about the Aleph class, like whoever would want to join, like if they already know to read Hebrew, it's easier that way, because most people in the class know. So like we begin that way.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Yes. Knowing the letters and vowels will definitely help you coming into that Seminary Hebrew class. Very much so. How about we pause for a minute, and then we'll come back, and I'd love to know what questions folks have here at this point, and then I'll come back with some more questions for Jack and Ilana and Shoshana. Jacob, please, and then Alex.
Oh, thank you. I guess mine's more specified in a way. I just want to, Shoshana, you said you had 2 entry points into the HUC application process, and that is my experience as well. And I was wondering if you could speak to how you perceived yourself, the growth within yourself over this time. Was there any pinpoints, or like any even emotional aspects of yourself that you found from like point A to point B during this journey of first step of application to the application that got you in the second time?
Thank you. And I'll start with the Hebrew for sure. That was a really big step up. And also, I was coming from a different culture and a different environment. And at Pades, I met, several people from different places, and also just hearing about everybody's journeys and stories, and even introduction like to Mishnah and Talmud and all these texts that I did not have experience with. That really, that was a growth for me. And even throughout that time, I was still working with HUC and communicating. I was in contact with Rabbi Chaim from Jerusalem, and I went to HUC services, and so I got to meet the community as well. That was a really good preparation for me. And so I even knew, even coming to HUC, some of the students who were there coming to New York campus. I was already part of the community, which maybe does not happen for everybody. But I think that I had confidence in myself as well at this point, that going into rabbinic school, that I did not have a year before. And I think that I understood and knew what I was looking for and what I wanted to learn more of. And so I had a base of where to start from, which was very helpful. So I think that was I think it was a really good choice. And that recommendation actually came from somebody from HUC. They, instead of saying, no, we can't take you, there was a recommendation that this is probably what you need. And before coming to rabbinic school, like I said, I took my Hebrew test in block letters and stuff, because I did not know what I needed. I did not know what I was looking for. So it was really helpful to have somebody guide you in that way.
Awesome. Thank you.
So I'd love to just add on one more piece for those who are sitting here saying, wait, Shoshana, Jacob, what are you talking about? So let me just share that that our admissions process works a little differently than, say, an undergraduate admissions process where you get in or you don't get in. And we actually have several possible outcomes during our admissions process. One of them is a response of not at this time. And not at this time does not mean no, as Shoshana just said, right? You received a not at this time the first time because you needed to do some more study, and you went and did that more study, and the admissions officers share, right? The admissions folks shared with you, these are the areas that we think you need to grow in a little bit before you're ready to begin rabbinical school. And so it's not uncommon at all that someone might receive a not at this time and then apply a year or 2 or 5 years later when they feel ready and when they've been able to follow through on those recommendations from the admissions team. So thanks for the question, Jacob. Alex, and then Harish.
Hi, thank you. So I guess I was going to cheat and sneak in 2 questions. The first one, during the year in Israel, and I guess afterwards, but especially that year, our classes primarily in English or Hebrew. And then the second one, also to do with the year in Israel, my loved ones would want me to ask what considerations are made in light of recent events or events that might happen in the future when considering if and when we're going to hold classes in Israel, sending students there, getting students back if there's issues, things like that.
So I will take on the second question second, and I wonder if one of our students wants to take on the first question, ask about what classes are in Hebrew and what classes are in English.
I'm happy to.
Great.
So like Hebrew obviously is in Hebrew, and then it really just depends kind of what level of Hebrew you're in my experience, at least. Maybe other folks have other experiences. So like, for example, when I took biblical grammar, the level that I was in biblical grammar was taught in Hebrew for the most part. But I don't think that necessarily was true for folks in Kita Aleph. So like, it really just depends. And then for the other classes, like about history of Zionism, or whether it's like Second Temple history, like those are in English.
Thanks,
I guess
Alana.
also was in Hebrew too, but that depends on the level. The like Talmud, Mishnah, like that class also was taught in Hebrew for me.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Alex, as to your second question, it's a really important one. And we take the safety and security of our students. That's the highest value that we have. And so currently, I can tell you what's going on currently. I can tell you none of us knows what's going to happen in the future. And truly, like, of the utmost importance is security. So we currently have year in Israel students who have chosen to stay in Israel. And we also have Year in Israel students who have chosen for the time being to be elsewhere. Some of them have whatever elsewhere means to any given individual. And we're really honoring whatever decisions each student needs to make for themselves. And so for our student, right now we have like a whole scaffolded hybrid learning program that our team in Israel has been amazing at creating. Some of our professors are even double teaching right now so that they can teach our students who are in Israel and in Europe, in European and Israel time zones, and then teach again students in American time zones. And so we really number one priority is safety and security. And we are in the team in Israel is like second to none. They're in constant contact with the government, with all the security, and Israel is really good at that. They unfortunately have had to learn, what to do. And so so our students in Israel are starting to gather in person again for some things, which is amazing that they're able to. And should that change, they will change that. So definitely, that's sort of what I can share today. And like I said, I don't know, none of us knows, unfortunately, what will come. I hope that's the start of an answer at least, and I'm happy to talk further offline also.
No, I think it is. The gist being, if people feel more comfortable needing to be physically somewhere else, that is something that can be accommodated, which is good to know.
I think it quite honestly depends on what's going on in Israel, right? We're in a moment of war. And so that is, like there in other moments in time, that has not always been the option. I would say under more normal circumstances, the Year in Israel is a required part of the rabbinical school experience. And we're in extraordinary circumstances, unfortunately, right now.
I appreciate that. And frankly, it's something I really like about the program. The fact that it was required in the first place was a strong in favor for my opinion.
Yeah. Thanks, Alex. Harish. Oh, you're muted. So.
I have a couple of questions. The first one is to you, like whether we'll get the recording of this session.
Yes.
We can watch it. Okay. And the next one is for starting with the rabbinical school's journey, like how did people prepare? Because even with the recommended reading, like there's tons of reading, and I'm sure there's a lot of reading to be done even outside the recommended one. So how did you guys prepare? And then the second one is, for me, we don't have a proper synagogue in the Reform community out here in India at all. I mean, there's just one community and we don't have a synagogue. So we just meet in places of different Jewish organizations and hold our ceremonies. So normally we don't quite have Shabbat services also. So in light of this, like how much practical knowledge of, being experiencing Judaism does one need to have to be able to study for the rabbinical school? So so these two I'll remember some more. Yeah, those are the
Thanks
questions.
so much. Those are great questions, Harish. Would any Shoshana or Ilana or Jack, do you want to answer any parts of those? How you went about figuring out, with the breadth of what there is to study Jewishly, like how you went about deciding for yourself how you were going to approach preparing, and then also thinking about Jewish practice, and are there certain things that were really important for you to have experienced before you came into rabbinical school?
I'll say something. My story is different because I grew up in a Jewish community, and so it's a bit different. But I also, in rabbinic school, I have had moments where, you know, when we talk about weddings, we had a class about life cycle. And the question is, what do you know? What do you remember? And even though I have been through so many weddings, I did not have back then the emphasis of like noting down the details and everything that I would remember to use now, which is something maybe that I should have thought of. But also, like, HUC, I think, is really aware of the diversity of students that come in from different Jewish backgrounds and Jewish knowledge. And I think that even in starting from Israel, the first year in Israel, we have, you know, the opportunity to go around different synagogues and, you know, shoe shopping. You go for Shabbat, every Shabbat, you can try out a different synagogue, you can try out different activities. Even in New York as well, the first year you get to, you know, not New York, but in statewide, you get to to teach in a Hebrew school, so that you have the opportunity for Shabbat and for other occasions to really go around and observe and learn. So I will leave part of the other questions, but I think I even if I came from a Jewish community, I would say that I didn't come with the knowledge that really applies to, you know, rabbinic school. And I appreciate that we had to relearn those things that I did not pay attention to.
I'll say that like my entry point into rabbinical school came primarily like first academically. My undergraduate and first graduate degree was in religious studies, and then professionally working in the Jewish communal service. I did not read from the Torah until I was a first year rabbinical student in Israel. And so like I hadn't had kind of the exposure to the kind of more ritual aspects of the work. And like some of that you will get in seminary more informally than in a kind of a structured way. But one of the things I'd done in the kind of the year between application and my year in Israel was to just try to live in Jewish time. Shabbat, holidays, community where you can find it, if not in a synagogue, in Jewish organizations. I started to read some, or attempt to read slowly, painfully, some, you know, Israeli newspapers, you know, just kind of stuff like what's happening in the Jewish world outside of kind of my New York bubble. And so just trying to immerse somewhat while kind of getting a sense of what it's like to live kind of, you know, week to week, Shabbat to Shabbat and everything in between, while also, you know, learning trope and, you know, paying attention to what Parsha we're reading, and, you know, just to kind of get a sense of what's in a more kind of holistic way the life and work of a rabbi might look like.
Thanks.
Yeah. I think, I mean, there's a couple of things that come to mind. It sounds like, you know, the one of the good things I think about the last few years in the pandemic is that there are so many online options. So like that might be one way to, like, so many synagogues, you could go every week to Central or to like any big, you know, you could like see like what that looks like. And I'll say too, like I grew up in the Reform movement, like going to religious school, had a bat mitzvah, was confirmed, like all these things. And I still got to rabbinical school and was like, I don't feel like I don't know anything. Like, so I think that I think the thing to overcome that, the way to like get over that is just to be like, this is a learning experience. Like I'm like, I think about this even now in my last year, like my big sermon is next week and I'm like getting feedback and I'm like, oh, okay, it's not bad. I'm not like, you have to learn. I don't know how to write a really big, I haven't written that many really big sermons yet. This is just a learning opportunity. And so like, I think for me looking at it, like so you could go your whole life being a rabbi, learning about Judaism and not learn everything. So it's just a chance to learn more. And so for me, that kind of helped when I had those feelings of like, because I had never read the Talmud before. I didn't even really know what the Mishnah was. Like there were so many things that even in mainstream Reform Jewish life, like I didn't know. I felt like I didn't know. And I think just being like, this is just like, there's so much to learn. And like, and you'll figure out the things, like, it turns out Talmud's not really my thing, but I have a lot of experience teaching Hebrew and in Israel education. Like those are the things that I've gravitated towards in my time at HUC. So I think that like I think most people feel like there are holes and it's just an opportunity to fill them. I think. And, but yeah, it is a lot of work and a lot of reading. And I think for me also just learning how to skim better as to that point, just like figuring out like what it is you actually need to know. And like, okay, I'm just gonna read the beginnings of these paragraphs and the beginning and end. And like, okay, sometimes you can't read all 50 pages. That's just like the way it is, I think, in most grad school programs. But so just those are a few things that came to mind through your question.
Thanks to all three of you for that. I wanna, I think what I'm hearing from all three of you is, I would call it intellectual curiosity. We're not looking for our applicants to know everything. No one knows everything. It is impossible to know everything. You're never going to know everything. And if that's your goal, then I'm sorry to break it to you, it's probably not going to happen for you. And being intellectually curious is a tremendous piece of what it means to be a rabbi, right? To be a constant, continuous, lifelong learner. And so we are looking at when folks apply, we're looking at that question of like, is this an intellectually curious person? And how are they showing us that they're an intellectually curious person? So I thank you so much for those. Katie, I see your hand. I had one question in the chat that was sent to me privately that I wanted to ask first, and then I'll come to you. Okay. Fabulous. So the question's asked, what do you feel was the most important step during your application process? And what would you do differently if you were to go through the application process again? So most important step during your application process, and what would you do differently if you were going through it again? I'll share for myself. I remember that there was one question during my interview that I had a really hard time answering. And I still remember what the question was because that's me. And I don't know about you, I'm one of those people who like stays up at night thinking about the things that, you know, that I could have done better or something like that. So there was one question that was asked of me. And what I will share is that the question was taken directly from the language in my personal statement. Like word for word, I was asked about something that I wrote in my personal statement and I could not answer the question. And so my recommendation to folks, I shouldn't say I couldn't, I struggled to answer the question. It was difficult. It took me a couple minutes to figure out what I wanted to say. And so my recommendation, if I were to do that again, would be read your application again. If you're in the process of applying, read your application like right before your interview so that you know what it is that you said in your application, because anything you say in your application is free game is open for us to ask you questions about. The entire process of applying to HUC is really a process of allowing us to get to know you better and to know the fullness of who you are. We're not looking for a cookie cutter rabbinical student. You've heard 3 very different stories from Alana and Jack and Shoshana about how they came to rabbinical school. You should know what it is that you wrote so that you can answer questions about what it is that you wrote. I wonder if Jack or Ilana or Shoshana, you have anything that you want to add to either the application process or like the getting ready to apply process, the working on your application that you think of that you either felt was really important for you or you wish you could go back and do a little differently. Ilana,
Yeah.
please.
I think for me, I mean, we talked a lot about it, but like, I think the Hebrew piece is like, I definitely emphasize that because it like Jack said, it's so important to the whole rest. It's like a foundation for the rest of your time. But something that I did that that was really helpful was that I sent it out to the same rabbi, but another rabbi at my family's congregation. I sent my application to him and he didn't like edit it per se, but he sort of just like, he gave me like some feedback. He didn't like do a deep dive because rabbis are busy, but like, I think just having that, like somebody else looking at it who wasn't my mom, like to really, who had done it before. And even if it's just to like, can you just like see, like read this, even if you just like give me some like very broad, comments, I think was helpful because it made me feel like, okay, he got in, he did it. He has some prior knowledge, and it felt really, I felt like a lot more secure. Not that it was like a perfect application. I've gone back and read it recently and was like, whoa, that's fascinating that I wrote that. But the point is like, just that I think it was helpful to have that kind of outside voice of somebody who knew what the process was like to give it a look.
Thanks, Ilana. That's definitely something we recommend to everyone is an outside voice. I would say in a few different ways, actually. I would say both to look at your application and give feedback. Also to have some of the conversations with, and we have we've developed a great list of questions. If you don't have it from us already, I can get it to you, that we recommend folks think about as you're considering, applying to rabbinical school. And those can be amazing starting places for conversations with those mentors, and they can help you create mentors out of people who might just be, rabbis in your sort of general sphere, as you have some deeper conversations with them. So, Jack, I know I saw you were about to share as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would just add that it feels like a conversation, like you're interviewing each other, and so having gone through sort of more traditional academic grad school applications, which are rigorous, and this is a rigorous application, so give yourself the time. It like requires like more of you spiritually, emotionally, than it might if you were applying elsewhere. But you're sitting at a table with folks. You're having dinner. At least dinner was like a part of my interview process, and so there's an opportunity to kind of get to know one another, and so to feel out your interviewers for fit. Come with your questions about the program and about like which of your interests you might have the opportunity to pursue, what kind of support you might have. I think approaching it as a conversation is also a way to sort of ease some of the the anxiety that one might feel, or the mishigas that comes up with these kinds of more formal interrogation style meetings. I was given the very loving advice by Rabbi Andrew Goodman before my interview, just like, we're not looking for rabbis, like we're looking for rabbinical students. And so like, come with your questions, come with your curiosity, come be part of the conversation.
Amen and amen. Shoshana, anything you want to add?
Yeah, but I think when I was applying, we did not have the luxury of like this meeting. So because I was also like applying from a different continent, I was just it was like one person, like I did not have mentors or anything, and so I think this is really good. My rabbi is a conservative. I come from a conservative community and was not very happy with me applying to Reform Rabbinic School, and so it was a bit of a challenge from the beginning. So I think this is like really helpful, and I wish I had this, like meeting and learning from other students and their journeys. I think that's good.
Yeah, totally get that. So what I would lift up from what you just shared, Shoshana, is two things. Is that we still have a little bit more time together, and there's lots more time throughout the week to join in different possibilities and different, in different conversations and learning and tefillah and all sorts of things. And we are so very happy to, number one, connect you with students, and number two, as Shoshana, you're saying, like, well, I have this, I didn't have the access to all of the things that I wish I'd had access to, and sometimes that's because of where we live, and sometimes it's because of any other variety of things. And so if you're in a place of saying, I don't really have a rabbinic mentor right now, and I'd really like one. We have amazing alumni all over the world who are very, very happy and eager to mentor prospective rabbinical students. I'll put all of my information in the chat at the end, and you'll also get follow-up emails from me and from Michelle. But I just want to name that if you don't have your own mentor yet, like Alana, you were describing, you know, being able to go to your rabbi, if you don't have that relationship, that's okay. We're happy to help you find someone who would be a good match for you. Katie, thanks for your patience.
First, thank you all for the wonderful answers you've been giving. I've learned a lot. But I wanted to ask if there's anything that like each of the current students thinks is like a must read or a must consume before applying or while applying. Like it doesn't have to be like a book, it could be like a podcast or like a YouTube video, just something that you think is like really important to know about for like going in. It'd be very helpful for my reading list.
I'm just going to jump in and say Torah, just because, you know, it has to be said. I wouldn't say like there was one like specific must read, must listen, must do. Aside from Torah, and I found actually like the most helpful resources were other like Jews in my community, Jewish professionals, other folks who I knew were interested in the program, just like people as the greatest resource. People, including rabbis who are not working in pulpit positions, but who could give me a sense of like what's kind of the full scope of rabbinic work could look like. So, you know, community-based rabbis in hospice or hospitals, chaplains, and that was very helpful coming in because I had a greater sense beyond the kind of congregational role of what like the other side of rabbinical school might look like.
I think one of the good reads that I did was a history on Israel. So a book, I think HUC has a recommendation for what book to read. That was very helpful for me because I had, you know, being in Israel, I had an idea of where we are or what we're talking about. So it was very, very helpful. So I'll put that on the list.
I think for me, one of the books that was the most important to read was Abraham Joshua Heschel's The Sabbath, but it's very short, but I had never like thought about, like my family had Friday night dinner every week, but like I hadn't really thought about Shabbat in that way before. So for me, that was a really transformative book and a very classic one that I actually haven't read in rabbinical school. So for me, it was also really I think it's so classic and so important. So having read that before and then not having even talked about it in rabbinical school has been, I think that was like a really, I think about that book a lot and like how I understand my relationship to Shabbat.
I just read that one, so I could like get like a sense of accomplishment, like to be like, oh, I finished something. And you're totally right. It's like, oh my gosh, I didn't like get it until like the last chapter. I'm like, wait, it beautiful. Thank you. Really good recommendation.
Well, I'm glad like thought it was good though. Sorry, I don't have another.
I would echo Torah. I'd echo all of the recommendations that everyone's given, and I would definitely echo Torah. Right, like take the time, read Torah, study Torah, go to Torah study classes. As I don't know who was it saying, like you can access Torah study from literally all over the world. Even if you don't have Torah study nearby, you can access recordings of Torah study from all over the world. There are amazing resources out there. You can read a commentary about Torah. The other thing I would add, Katie, is that I'm a big reader, and I love to just ask people what they're reading. I think it's such an interesting question to ask people, and I think people like to answer that question. And so I would encourage you to like think about who are people who have some Jewish knowledge in your life and ask them, what was a book that was really important to you and why? Because again, you know, like for Shoshana, it was History of Israel, and for Alana, it was the Sabbath, and for every single person, it's going to be something different. For me, a really important book I read, again, this was 15 years ago, and many other books have come out since then, but it was called The Spirituality of Welcoming. There have been many more versions about relational Judaism that are actually a much, I would say, a more current look at an understanding of relational Judaism than that book was at the time. But that was the book that was out at the time about relational Judaism, and about thinking about community from the core of relationship. And I learned about that because someone I knew had studied with the author and told me to read the book, right? So ask people. I just want to note and thank you to Rachel and thank you to Michelle for dropping in the chat the link to huc.edu/admission/how to apply. We can include that in follow-up also. That page has a ton of information on it, including application dates, admissions, different deadlines, information about other requirements, information about that suggested reading list, and many other things. So that is one of my go-to pages on the HUC website, and it is, I know, a little hard to access. So one question that was posed to me also is a question about deferring. So I just want to say out loud that we have prospective students every year who apply and are admitted and choose to defer. You can defer, I believe it's up to 2 years. Does that sound right to you, Michelle? Up to 2 years. So if you're thinking to yourself, oh, I want to go to rabbinical school in 5 years, this is not the moment to apply. If you're thinking to yourself, I really want to go to HUC, or I'm really interested in rabbinical school, but I don't want to say but, it's not an either or, and there's an experience I really want to have first, and I'm ready to apply right now, by all means, you just let us know in your application, and we'll have conversations about that, both through the application process and through the interview process, around why it is that you want to be applying now, and why it is that you want to be waiting a year or 2 years before starting school. I want to just be mindful of time. Harish, please.
A very short question or statement. Like, I would really like to have a rabbinical mentor or mentors, like if
Yep.
possible, so would guide me.
Great. So I would say that, and someone else already messaged me saying the same thing. And so I would say this, I will, I'm going to put my information in the chat right now. And if you are interested in any of the things we discussed today, please, please, please send me an email, schedule time on my Calendly. I am here. So I am the person, just to sort of give you a little bit of a sense, I'm the person who meets with every rabbinical applicant. And I meet with everyone before you submit an application, before I would recommend even before you start working on the application, because as Jack pointed out, right, the application asks different things of you, right, especially emotionally and spiritually, than sort of perhaps an undergraduate application or an application to a different kind of graduate school might. And so it's really it's a great gift to me to be able to have those conversations, and I think will be tremendously helpful also to start like saying some of the things out loud that you'll be writing in essays. And then I also meet with everyone between application and interview. So I'm just naming those things out loud that this is a different kind of application process than to other grad schools, and we are really, really here to support throughout the entire journey. And I meet with people all along the journey. You don't have to be ready to apply to say that you'd like to have a meeting with me or with one of my colleagues. We're here. We'd love to talk to you. I see another recommendation of God in Search of Man by Heschel and As a Driven Leaf by Steinberg. Thank you for those great recommendations, both great books. With a few minutes left, I wonder if anyone else has any other burning questions that you would like to ask today, or any of our students have anything that we haven't touched on, either things that you wish you had known, or something you wish, a piece of advice you wish someone had shared with you, or a really great piece of advice that someone did share with you as you were thinking about applying to rabbinical school and as you were considering this journey. Ilana, please.
I think something that I would say is that it really is, I mean, it's like so cheesy to say, but very much a journey. And I know sometimes people are like, oh, 5 or 6 years, like it's so long. And it is, it's a very long time. And I think that like now in my last and 6th year, I can really look back and see, oh yeah, like I was not ready to be a rabbi really until the last 6 months. And it really took all of that formation and time and experiences to get there. And I remember feeling like, oh, I'm never going to feel ready. Like, you know, there are these things I'm good at, but I don't feel like I'm good at these things. And it's just like a not yet, I think for me is, and just like knowing that like, it's all a part of the process. And the other thing I would say is like whatever, whether it's before you're applying or once you're in the program, I just would like really look at things like we talked about with this like sense of curiosity, and also just taking whatever opportunities you have to take, whether it's reading something, talking with people, like Jack said, like talking to people in your community, like whatever it is, like take those opportunities because they all are such a part of your journey. And just like, I guess I would say yes a lot, not so that you're burnt out and overworked, but like as you are able, like say yes to different types of opportunities, because it's all just like a part of the like quilt of like your journey. And it really takes a long time to really get to a place where like, yeah, even if you like, I also didn't start school till I had not a very long career, but like had been out in the workforce, had worked at a startup for a while. Like I took time too. And like, and I still wasn't ready, even though I had that life experience. So just, it's all sort of part of the journey and process. Very cheesy, but I think very true.
Agreed. Just like agreed all around, you know, same questions like, why is this so long? I'm like, oh, right. Now, like in the 5th year, just like moving into the role, it's like identity formation. It's not just about like kind of technical skills, which, you know, also take time to acquire. And I think like the one thing that I would add, at least from my experience, is that the joke is that like, they don't tell you when you apply to rabbinical school how much singing will be involved. There's your service leading, it's Shabbats, like, and sometimes it's just you, and you know, you have your congregation and maybe they'll sing and maybe they won't, but like either way, you're singing, no matter whether you feel comfortable with that, how you know, technically proficient you are, there's going to be singing. So I wish I had been better prepared for that, and I'm still kind of working on that part of my leadership and my prayer leadership, and it's work. So just know they'll be singing.
Yeah, just my last one is like, I think pray for the sake of praying, or study Torah for the sake of studying Torah, because when you're in rabbinic school, sometimes you get lost in the academic part of it, and your spirituality. I think that's an important thing to keep, and to also observe and experience different, you know, Jewish communities and occasions in Israel, Mamuna or Sikh or any other Jewish experiences that you can soak up. It's good for your soul going through these 6 years. I'm a 6-year rabbinic student as well. So, yeah.
Amen and amen. Thank you so tremendously much to Ilana and Shoshana and Jack for being with us all today. Thank you to everyone who took time to be here today. It's really, really a wonderful treat to be here. I'm putting in the chat the link for the rest of the week. We have many, many sessions all week long, including I'll be back in a couple hours with different students to talk a little bit about the experience in school. We focused a lot on preparing for school, and we're going to focus a little differently about the experience in rabbinical school this afternoon. And thanks for your excellent questions and thoughtfulness. And please, please, please reach out to us. We are here to talk at whatever stage of the journey you are on.